Very soon it will all begin again. People will start color coordinating their outfits, maybe pulling out helmets and a variety of paraphernalia representing their side. See, once we have chosen our sides, once we have made our stance, our competition is pointed out and we find ourselves in the correct type of company. Yes, football season is about to begin. I'll never forget one time I went to a Penn State-Ohio State football game, and I observed people investing so much time and money and energy around making that profound statement on which team they are on. That strong pride and loyalty of their school. And I found myself walking around during the tailgate time so mesmerized that I was drawn in quickly to join one side as opposed to the other. I instantly became a member of the group. I had my cause for the day. A couple hours was all that it needed. I drank the Kool-Aid and I was hooked. I share this as a reminder of how easy it is to become hooked into a new community. That joy of simply bonding with others, where we turn ourselves quickly to be fully committed to a team or to a group. This week I've thought a lot about what does it mean? How does it become that a young person can go out and to choose the right colors, to grab a helmet, and then to grab a flag and go to a white supremacist rally? I recall all those faces of 20-something-year-olds as I was walking the streets of Charlottesville that Saturday morning, looking at the intensity on their faces, wondering, praying, believing that surely one, if not many of those folks who have gathered in a stance of hate against someone else found themselves looking around at some point on that day, wondering how do they end up there? Who are they? Watching a car plow through a group of people, finding themselves asking that profound question, maybe the most brilliant question that we can ask of ourselves: where am I? Jesus called the crowd to him and said to them, "Listen and understand. It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but it is what comes out of the mouth that defiles." A young white supremacist slowly begins to see where he actually is. He begins to open his eyes and to see that destructive reality of violence taking place all around him, and he becomes sick to his stomach. Reasoning tries to come into his mindset as he says to himself, I actually have not hit anyone or physically hurt anyone. But then the reasoning fades away and he starts to play back his own words. My words have become my weapon of choice. My words have added to this violence. It is these very words why I joined this group of hate. And now I find myself in this city, thinking back to those words of the first night that I gathered with this group, speaking against others, speaking against foreigners. And I'm reminded of my draw of being in community, for it was the first time at being with this group that reminded me of those rallies in my old high school football days when we were about to play our biggest competitors across the county line. This hate group had filled a void in my life. But now I stand and I can see blood on the streets, and I wonder, how did I get here? I feel within myself the knots that are in my stomach, and I find myself moving back from the front line back towards the end. I say that I feel lightheaded and that I need some water, but in actuality, I feel lost. Lost in the grief of all my words. I close my eyes, I lower my head, and I listen to what is being spoken. I could hear the violence, the screaming. And it all leads to this realization of a sadness. Where am I? What am I exactly standing for? I came thinking that I was going to help cleanse all that was wrong in the world. I came thinking that I could take equality away from someone else and it would make me feel stronger about myself. I came thinking that I was helping with some purpose of heritage. But then I opened my eyes and I looked at the dirt on my hands, and I felt disgusted when I realized where I am. I was there, hurting other people. I realized that I myself had become a foreigner to standing for the good. And in that humility and that deep, deep grief, I find myself wanting to be whole again. I find myself wanting to be healed from within me so that I can go out and to help heal others. Today, a Canaanite woman in our gospel comes to Jesus seeking healing for her daughter. And there's no greater rival for the Israelites than the Canaanites. The bottom line, like with football, this is their biggest rival. And Jesus tries to send her away, explaining that he first came for Team Israel. And she knew this. But yet she humbly stands her ground. She placed herself as like a dog at the feet of the master, begging for crumbs. And in her words of great humility, she asked Jesus to help her because her faith is so strong. She knows what he's capable of doing. She knows that he has the very heart of God. In her determination to heal her daughter, she shows this absolute strength of faith. And in showing this, we find this wonderful turn of events in today's gospel where Jesus takes a step back and realizes in the strength of her faith that yes, he has come to help the Israelites first, but he has been placed right here in this moment to help this mother. And Jesus makes a turn and says, your faith is so great, and her daughter is healed. She came seeking healing, and Jesus could only give her that healing because of her devotion to God and her belief in who he was. On Wednesday, I found myself, maybe like some of you, continuing to skim through article upon article in our local newspaper. Speaking of this tragedy of Charlottesville, trying to have an understanding of what I witnessed and what we have witnessed on the news. I was moved by one particular article that was not about blaming someone, but about talking of the faith of his father and his desire to bring healing to his son. A father in North Dakota whose son's name was Peter, who had become a white supremacist and who had made this trek down to Virginia with a hate group. And the father talks about how he desperately pleaded with his son in the months beforehand, trying to bring him back to a mindset of love, of caring, of understanding the need to be there for our neighbors. And yet his son left. And the father speaks about the repercussions in this small town that he lives in, where his neighbors and his friends and probably even his family began to say to themselves, if his son believes this, then surely the family believes it as well. The father asked that question to himself, where am I? So he writes a letter to the editor of their local paper and says, I love my son. I want nothing but for my son to be healed, but I do not stand where he stands. His family is against the stance that he has made. His dad said that I want to make sure that my words are there for healing and not defiling. I want to make sure that my words are there for building up and not tearing down. I want to make sure that they know he was raised in a home that did not think that way. As a reminder that our children and those closest to us might make decisions opposite of what we have taught them and shown them and given them. It tells us that we're always to be mindful of our words. Are our words like a simple crumb of Christ's healing love, or are our words of violence? For our words explain the answer to that question, where am I? Amen.